Are pants optional?
Mandatory.
All right, so we'll get started. It's what, 6 o'clock? So we need to approve the minutes from last month.
I make a motion to approve the April 16th minutes as submitted.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Right.
Aye. All right, treasurer's report.
So we actually did pretty good on our sales tax money. Last month, we brought in $78,683.33. Sorry, that was this month, which is a little over 20,000 heavier than what we had last year. One thing that was contributed to is while I was speaking with some car dealerships, they actually sold a lot of vehicles during this time. So even though small businesses probably took a hit, vehicle sales, which has typically been our #1 contributor, was up. Again, I wouldn't expect that trend to continue, but for right now, we're sitting up on the high side of our revenue. We did receive our quarterly, cellular fee of, I believe, around $1,500, which is right on what we expected it to be. We spent less than what we made in last month, of about $66,000, and the checking account balance ended at $396.21.69. So consistent, we're trying to build that back up, so that's good. For CDs, I did not get to that $8,000 CD in time. Whenever I called them, they probably could have done something with it, but it renewed at 1%. So, but it was, again, it's a 8,318. So current balance of their CDs is 210,816.15.
So that's treasurer's report, right? I want to make a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Accounts payable.
This is the vendor summary for all our bills, less taxes, payrolls, and the rest of it. I probably want to see that one.
So credit card.
That's the next one.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys are ready to go to the next page.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the ordinary, right? I mean,
No.
on that.
The only out of the ordinary stuff is the credit card. So everything that says CVD in front of it is all reimbursable. Was purchased for emergency management, but for logistical purposes, 911 fronted that. And I've got at the end of the meeting, I have a whole report on reimbursable items that 911 will be claiming for the CARES Act to be coming up with. So honestly, it came out to, about 75% or 80% of this whole bill is all COVID stuff that's going to get reimbursed. It's not necessarily 911 related things.
Any other discussion on accounts payable? Go ahead to payroll.
2 payrolls. This should be the last time of a ungodly amount of overtime, but with overtime being what it is, again, 3 people in training and me not being able to cover temporarily, that added to an increased amount. Then we had someone go on paternity leave because they had a baby. So that's a bunch of stuff happening at once. So obviously a 24/7 operation, gonna get overtime with it. So yes, overtime is up. However, we are able to claim some of that because it's outside of the budget, because typically COVID prevented me from picking up some of those shifts. I'm serious. Those shifts.
You missed Troy for like 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So COVID prevented me from picking up some of those shifts, which I normally would. So we're actually able to claim some of the overtime since March, attempt to claim, see if it gets approved, for a lot of the overtime, not all of it, but the amount that would be one shifts that I would pick up. So we already went through and made that, and I already got the justification ready. Next one, we had some folks start coming out of training. So you're gonna start seeing that decrease tremendously. Looking at the schedule, everyone was essentially their normal overtime of 4, and it's gonna start going down from there. So we should hopefully see the last big hits of this, me knocking on wood, the big overtime that we've been experiencing lately. Our trainees are now starting to one by one get released to be able to actually fill shifts, and we can kind of normalize from there. I will get you that, to you and put out something. As far as the comparison, we're doing really good on our full-time payroll lines. But just keep in mind with everything I just explained, whenever we look at the next 2 graphics, because they're kind of tough to look at. But yes, our overtime is up. We are going to be claiming some of that to get some of that back, hopefully. And our part-time is up as well. We've been utilizing part-timers as well to kind of put back some other overtime. Again, with the trainees coming out, that'll be able to get back into our normal field. We're pretty good and under on retirement and other benefits, as we're just a little bit under on both of those, which is great. So other than that, we're sitting pretty good.
I noticed on your, if you go back to your accounts payable, the Zoom. Yeah, couldn't we claim that?
So what we did, we had GoToMeeting.
GoToMeeting, yeah.
So we, and I'm gonna go back. Well, so it's okay. So what I did is, since we already had GoToMeeting purchased, we actually used GoToMeeting for all of our coordination calls for our daily calls. We had to upgrade it because it didn't have enough licenses on it. We had the bare minimum licenses, and we only had, I think, like 11 people could call in. We have sometimes 30 people on that call. So we had to buy the next level up. So we bought the next level up, and it was prorated to be a year's worth of that. So I turned that in, and Zoom actually works better for this type of meeting. So we're essentially just transferring our stuff from GoToMeeting to Zoom. So by us buying Zoom, that's what we're going to use as 911. And essentially the government just bought GoToMeeting because that's what we're using for COVID-19. Because we're not using Zoom for COVID. So,
Yeah.
well, but you got to also remember, we use that for our in-services, in our meeting, our staff meetings. We've already used that stuff to begin with. And we just started using it with board meetings too. So we can, I mean, I can turn it in, obviously, but I was just I didn't want to overdo it, because I turned in the GoToMeeting for it because that was what I thought was justified, because it had to increase directly because of COVID. And we were going to use Zoom anyway, because we've already used GoTo for the last year or two. We're just going to switch over to Zoom because it seems to be a little bit more user-friendly for us. And then it makes it easier for public viewing for like YouTube channel and things of that sort. But I certainly can, if you want me to, turn it in. Just,
I do go to for EMA and I do Zoom for 911.
yours. Well, it was paid for by 911 to begin with, so it'd be.
Any other discussion about accounts payable or payroll? Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve accounts payable.
I'll second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. That was just accounts payable, right?
Yes.
Okay. What about payroll?
I'll make a motion to accept the payroll report.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unfinished business.
I have none.
New business.
I have none.
Director's report.
I have that. So Congress passed a thing called the Coronavirus Assistance something CARES Act. It's wrote up there somewhere. Essentially, what that's one portion of that is things that were purchased directly related to COVID-19 that was not in your budget, you're able to claim that for reimbursement. So money was distributed to each state, who then distributed it to each county. And there's about 1.8 something million dollars for the county that they're working on a plan for redistribution to local organizations and entities that are eligible. So this is going to be 911's claim just for 911 to the county for part of that money. The money's already there. It's just trying to get exact rules and guidance on how it can be distributed. And at the end of the year, currently, until it gets extended, which it probably will, then whatever's left over will be paid back to the government. So that was the quick way of being able to give financial assistance out for a lot of places that were having a lot of hardships as far as like political subdivisions, and there's a whole slew of eligibility. But what we are looking at is essentially, it's going to be a little bit more than this. I did not add, and I still have to add some fuel onto there because we did use the truck for some things. So I need to figure out mileage. And what is the county? That was one thing I was going to ask.
You asked for verdict, but they just changed that.
Okay. Because I didn't know if it should go off of the fuel mileage for the truck or if it should go off the mileage paid for. That's what I figured. So, but I'll figure that up. And so it's like probably something like 40 cents to a mile. That's probably sounds right. So the only thing that I know, yeah, Monday there's another meeting. I wouldn't look for those to be any funds to change hands for a month or two. Probably Sarah might have any more insight on
Yeah,
that.
we probably won't be dispersing any monies probably until maybe as early as September.
Yeah, it's just a matter of making sure all the ducks are in a row, and I kind of prepared this because it's going to get audited, so it's kind of taking that. So what I've done is I've gone through each project and I've justified each line to discuss what are the things that we purchased and what they were used for. So for instance,
Did you buy any bottled water?
No bottled water.
All right, just checking.
We do have.
We got the vodka hand sanitizer, yes.
So this is essentially for the website and such. We tried using health department's website, but it's professionally done and you had to pay them every day to do it. So we already had a GoDaddy account, so we just added that site onto it. So that's essentially getting the reimbursement for that. Then after a year, we'll shut it off. Hopefully don't need it past then. We purchased an ultraviolet disinfectant eradicator, which is essentially a UVC disinfecting light. I'm not sure where it is. We've been using it everywhere. I think Midmo's cost them like $3,500. We got it for 178. It's not as big of one, but it does the job. We bought some hand sanitizer early on, a funnel and some small bottles for other hand sanitizer that we've been distributing. And a lot of these are, well, actually all of them credit card stuff. So this is that go-to meeting. And then a web camera that we had to use for that. Not this one, this was the $30 web camera. It was deemed to be lost. You couldn't get the web camera, and I needed one to have a microphone too. And literally it was $245 because of inflation. So that's the one that's in there. So that's what I've been using for the daily calls. So that's been claimed. And then a bunch of PPE items. We made a lot of 3D type deals to hold filters. I gave one of each of everything to SEMA because they were pretty interested in it all. But honestly, that's pretty deep. The most expensive thing was the rolls of bungee cord. I mean, everything else is a $34 roll made. I don't know how many masks it made. Yeah, 22 masks. And then like, I don't know how many of these adapters we've made for SCBA masks, but we got 3 different types of adapters that go into SCBA masks. That actually allowed us to not rely on the state for PPE because it was non-existent. The only thing we're getting from the state is brewery hand sanitizer and plastic garbage bags.
And fake N95.
And well, we had to return them.
Yeah.
We only had those for like 2 days.
Did come from the state.
And then this is the associated overtime. So when I went through, Stacy and I, we decided which shifts I would have been able to pick and I realistically would have. And if they were, they weren't probably like the 5th shift of the week, wasn't it, for some of those? So it was the ungodly ones that would have. Then I figured that person's overtime rate, length of the shift, and then that's how I figured the overtime that was associated with this. So this is not taking into account, well, essentially it is, but it would have been ones that I would typically fill in on in what we're at with paternity leave, 3 in training. Because I don't remember the last time I made a couple people work 5 days in 1 week consistently. So Stacy worked 8 days.
Only 7 days in a week, you're all right.
Yeah. A little bit cheaper. So that's the claim. The only other thing that I was going to add on there, I'll add Zoom, and then I got to add some fuel, which is I think like 3 trips to Jefferson City and 2 trips to Fortuna and 1 trip to Jamestown. So making $50 of fuel, but it's something. But so that's our claim that we have. Everything else has been either paid for by other means or was procured in another manner that didn't cost anything. So that's all I have other than the normal director's report, which we did do some, last month we did talk about pretty extensively our COVID-19 plans that we have both operationally and internally for how we're screening our employees, how we're screening callers. We've changed our plan probably 4 times since the beginning of this, and the dispatchers have been awesome with keeping up on everything. One benefit is whenever we do our web meetings, we record them and we actually put them out on our SharePoint site. So every time they log into SharePoint where they have their links, our training video is right there, and they're able to watch that for any updates that we've done, and that allows us to do really quick updates on software because of the screen capture and everything. So that's turned out to be very helpful. And it's always there for them to reference. So if they forgot how to do something, they just go back and check that video. Kudos to the team in there. They've been doing phenomenal with everything. We've screened, I don't know how many calls for the EMS related calls for service. We've screened about 20, no, not even 20. I think it was 12 calls met the criteria, and 6 of them ended up being a confirmed case. So that's, we haven't been the boy who cried wolf as far as calling coronavirus stuff like that. But everyone's followed the plans that we've had in place, and everyone's done a phenomenal job. And I've changed things 4 times just to irritate people, but things change. Everyone's done a fantastic job. So hats off to everybody out there in dispatch. They've been doing great. As far as, I talked to Kirk today also. We discussed a couple items. On our capital budget, we talked, there's a high point repeater that's on here. That is going to obviously take some time as we want to check coverage to see where it would be most ideally located. But one thing that whenever we were downstairs working on some programming issues, there is one base station, and granted it's one that's not used very often, that's essentially dead. There's a couple base stations that are pretty old. So it's going to be a recommendation of mine that we start phasing, replacing those base station radios one or two a year. The cost for those, I can't remember what they were, but it's all under 65,000 if we would do 2. So I wanted to say they were like 14 to 16,000 a piece, if even that. But like I said, there's one of them that's dead, so there's just one channel and we haven't been using it. Obviously, we would have caught it sooner, but we went into reprogramming, and it was, yeah, and it was an original base station. It's not, so it's a lot of those they've lasted quite some time. So just a matter of trying to phase some of those out with some newer equipment would benefit. This, and talking with him today, even if we started on this tomorrow, we're looking at probably 2021 before we're even getting into anything where we have to pay anything. So that might be something, and I don't have a clear plan on that, but as far as capital for this year, I wouldn't foresee spending the 65,000 on a high point repeater. I'd say probably starting the project this year and adding that on to next year's capital. And instead, it'd be a less amount, look at replacing a couple base stations downstairs. So I think that would be more of a priority. So we don't have.
How many base stations do we have? And then.
So luckily for us, the 2 main ones are brand new.
Yeah.
Law and fire are brand new. So you're looking at and not all of them would have to be replaced. In all honesty, we don't need a whole, some of those we don't need. I've actually taken a couple of them off the screen. So I don't know, I'd probably say maybe 8 more to be replaced total.
In total, or 8
8
total? Okay.
Yeah. Well, then we would have 8 more to be replaced. We already have the 2.
Okay.
So I'm guessing, but there's some of them that are selectable channels, and there's some of them that piggyback audio up one and talk on another. So it's kind of weird the way that it's configured, but it maps out to stuff. Pretty much, it's been some coronavirus stuff going on. It's about the bulk of it. Our call for service is down, which is to be expected compared to other months. So for April, we actually thought March was going to be the slowest month, but April being that, but a lot of the calls for service have been not so noisy. I don't want to say the other word, but been doing a pretty phenomenal job. Other than that, that's about all I have for the director's report. Unless there's any questions that I may be able to answer.
Any questions? No questions? So the next thing, public comments. Public here. I guess closed session. Somebody want to make a motion to go into closed session?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session, 6:20.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. The people on the computer, yes, yes, and yes.
Yes. Yes.